Yeah, so this video, the general topic is pretending. And as I've said many times in my last videos, well, I had some videos which are structured and some which were freestyle, but I feel like I'm basically just going to do a mixture from now. I'm just going to make a few notes, have a kind of framework, but mostly I just like freestyle. I feel like that's the joy of the video for me. It's kind of like it's like an outlet. Um, but yeah, so the general theme is pretending. Um, Pretending is tricky because basically there's different levels of pretending. So obviously, as I've explained in my past videos, and if you're new, I would suggest you watch some of like the earlier videos. I feel like the first three or the first four, maybe, or the first five. You don't need to watch all of them, but the earlier videos is where I basically create the foundation. Everything else, I'm gonna kind of be building on that. So I would I would suggest watching those first. However, as I've explained many times prior, um, on the relativistic plane or the world, like where we live, this conversation that we're having in is in the world. Like this is all in the relativistic plane, the dualistic plane. There's many levels and layers, and it's the same for many different aspects. So there could be levels of truth or levels of a lie. You could tell like a stark lie or a a white lie. You know what I'm saying? Just bending the truth a little bit, changing a little detail, or just an outright lie where there was no details that was right at all. So there's different kind of levels. But the tricky thing with pretending is that there's kind of there's levels of pretending which are it's obvious to the ego itself that it itself is pretending. But there are also levels of pretending where the ego itself is not even aware itself that it is pretending. Um, and that's why it gets tricky because one sec. Yeah, I just had to put my phone on silent. Um, but yeah, so there's states of pretending where the ego or you. When I'm saying see, it's tricky because when I say the ego, then already your mind is gonna start thinking, oh yes, he's speaking about my ego. He's not speaking about me. And that's one of even the main things of the ego. You could almost imagine it as a schism, and the ego, its structure, it creates like itself and an ego. See, even just the ego, or just the idea of an external god, or the devil, or demons, or angels, or any kind of power, higher power that is above you, that you might not be able to perceive, or but it's just like an other which is above you, like in power. And you might say, oh, it's God, or it was the devil, or something. You have to realize people won't like this, but all of those things, even the ego or whatever, all of those are all scapegoats. So the way the self kind of is, right? There's only there's only one self. The self is an individual, which means like one unit. I explained all of this before. One is equal to one. Like you can't really like divide that lower. Yes, all right, cool. In mathematics, like there might be like, oh, 0.5 and 0.1 or 0.002. Like that's a division of one. But do you see that even 0.001, like that's still a unit, or 0.002, like it's literally just still units. It's just an imaginary, you're just like moving the point like here and here, like it's just imaginary, like all of that stuff, like no, like there's one is like the lowest number that there is. Like it can't go lower than that. Like it's not divisible. Like a unit, an individual, which means you're indivisible. You can't be divided. But the way that the ego kind of works is that it creates these sections of yourself, and see, here's the trick. If you achieve something good, then you'll be like, yes, I did it. But then if you fuck up or something, or you'll be like, like my ego, like, I know, and I know, like, what's it called? Like my ego might be a bit arrogant, or my ego might this. See, and then the ego, you see how like that's not now a bit separated from you, and all of it is essentially you're neglecting responsibility, and you're neglecting and you're denying your own influence, or like you're denying that you did it to certain degrees, and it will depend on the situation, if you get what I'm saying. So the ego is one thing, and then you might say, like, then say something good happens or something, and then you might be able to realize, all right, cool. Like, let's say you win the lottery or something, and then you realize, all right, cool. That wasn't really me that did that. That was, like God did that. And then see God, or let's say like someone steals some money from you, or does something harmful to you. Then you might be like, like those was the demons made that happen. Do you get what I'm saying? So all of these things, these names, they're all arbitrary. It doesn't even matter. Like, if you ask certain people believe in God, but if you ask them what God is, they can't even tell you. Like, they don't even know what that is. That's the problem with these language and these boxes and these words, is that these things are elastic, and every other person, like, it could be the same word, and there's a million different inferences of what that word means, yet people will still use it. And they'll use it as this scapegoat kind of thing. So, so that's the first thing that you have to realize. Ego is, in a sense, it's like one is into two, or like it's an addition. There's two units now, and then now you're saying it's kind of like that's even supposedly a personality, like split personality disorder. Like, that's literally everyone. In a sense, has that to like some degree. It's just about degrees, if you can say. If it's really stuck, if you have like 10 different personalities, and you actually do different things and like different things, and it's completely different, then that's like obviously a disorder. But everyone's kind of got different sides to them to some degree, and like how sane you are, it's almost like how congruent all your different sides are to each other. And then if your different sides contradict each other, then that's almost insanity. So that's one to watch out for when if you say, so when I'm saying the ego, I'm saying you are the ego. Okay, so don't say, yes, I am and I have an ego. He's speaking about my ego that I have. Like, that's not really me. He's speaking about that. No, I'm speaking about you. That's the ego that's doing. That's the ego is creating an imaginary like section of itself, which is labeling the ego and saying that's not me. But all of this is just the ego doing that. It's just the one self. The ego and the self is basically the same thing. Like, there's not really like such a thing as God and the ego, like a God and the devil, like the self and the ego, like the true self, the higher self and the lower self. Like those, there's not really. It's just the same self. Do you get it? There's only one self. So I went on a tangent, but my whole point is that the ego. So when I'm saying the ego, you could almost think the ego is just like your psychological. It's like your self-image, everything in your thoughts. You could think your true self, higher self, is just the being. It is the self itself, and then the ego is like everything you think about that. So there's just you, and then your mind saying, yes, that's me, Nathaniel. Like, a human. See, like that's the self-reflection. It's already secondary. Like it's always a reflection secondary. You're labeling something. You're inferring something. But what are you inferring? The direct thing itself that you're looking at and coming to a conclusion about. If you look, you see someone and you say, oh, that's a human and his name is John. That's another human. His name is Sarah. That's a cat. It doesn't have a name. And you know what I'm saying? All of these things. So yeah, you see how all of that, the labeling, the seeing, is all secondary to the thing itself that you're perceiving. So that's like primary. So it's almost like you can't really say that there's a subject and an object. It's almost like you can either only say there's an object which can perceive itself. Like, as I said, red is red and is red. Like no one needs to look at it. It's still red. So you could have just pure redness, no one looking at it, and then also a soundtrack or thought, which is just a sound. It's just a sound that says, I am a human looking at red. And then that's secondary, and then that's basically created the illusion that there is a self here or subject looking at that object, which is red. And then that creates like the imaginary duality. But realize that there's only just red. It's tricky. Either you can say there's only just red, just the objects, no one looking at it, yet it's still itself. So like that cat is still a cat, even if no one's looking at it. Like no one needs to label it that. Or you could almost say that there's only the subject and there are no objects. So there is only the self. There is only the subject. Like there's no. This one's very tricky to explain. How the fuck have I got it? I got it from pretending. And then see, already on my second bullet point, I'm going on 100 tangents. So it's all the self. That's the absolute. And then everything within it is the relative, the dualistic plane. That's the subject and the object, the good and the bad, so on and so forth. And then within the dream, so it's all the self, the object and the subject. As I said, really you could say the self is just the subject and there's no objects for it to perceive other than its own self. But its own self is infinite. It's already all things. And like red is just one, like 0.00 infinitely small percentage of that. So when I'm saying that it's just perceiving itself, that doesn't mean it's just a blank void. Like, no, there's still all of this stuff because all of that is the self. Like, it actually is just that. But there's no like divisions. Like this thing, like they're not two different things. Like, it's just only the same self. There's not even, that was just literally the separation is just an idea. It's already a secondary overlay. You see it, it's just one thing. But then you have to just be able to, I don't really know how you can explain this. Like, you just have to be able to see that when you interpret something, when you infer something, it's always secondary. Even your conclusion is tertiary. Like all of these things. But this is what people are using, secondary and tertiary things to build their foundation. Like for their, like it's all just so backwards. So, all right, cool. The ego, the whole point I was explaining all of that is the ego. So the ego is the self, but it's basically all it is the self in a version where there is also something other than it. That's literally it. Like the ego is the self. The ego is the self, just in a version where to it, like as the self incarnates in that ego form in that particular time, it seems to that ego or self that there is something other than it. So like a human, and then there's the world. You know what I'm saying? And then there's like pieces of paper and all of this kind of stuff and videos. That's the ego. It's literally just the self, but it's incarnated. It's a particular form now, and there are things other than it because of that. Because remember, the self is absolute. So for it to be something particular, and it already creates that imaginary boundary, and it's that now, then there's already going to be other things within it, because it's just a schism within the absolute, which is everything. So it's just only one core truth. It's only one core truth, and then if you understand it, everything else makes sense. But literally, like probably all of you that's watching this, you don't even know this like truth. Like to you of course you understand it intellectually, otherwise you might not even be watching. But you don't really understand it to like, it's not in the bare bones, like in your cells. Like, it's not really like you're still something that you're thinking about. Like it's still psychological. It's not really like actual. And the whole reason why I went on that tangent is because I was saying that the ego is an expert at turning a blind eye to harsh truths, which it subconsciously knows is true, yet it denies. And I'm speaking about you. So when the whole reason I said all of that stuff and I went on a million tangents was literally just to remind you, I'm not speaking about your ego or something behind the curtain, some magic, or you think, oh yes, like, see, because you've already probably watched 1,000 spiritual videos and you have an idea of what the ego is. And all of those things is not the ego. It's you. It's the mechanism. It's not even like a thing. It's a mechanism that never stops. Like it keeps on self-perpetuating as we speak. You're doing it now. You are creating yourself. You are. It's almost like it's a feeling of self-congruence. Every single moment, you are labeling, you are narrating, you are inferring, and you're justifying, you're rationalizing. There's an infinite amount of things that you're doing in a millisecond to reinforce sameness to yourself, sameness, and this. Because as I was explaining before, to reach certain states of enlightenment, you have to cross the border of sanity and insanity. You have to already go beyond sanity and insanity. So in that sense, like a normal sane person might look at you and say that you're insane at that point, but you're actually just the most sane. Like, you have to kind of be balanced between sane and insane. You can't be a completely sane person and like get to this truth, or a completely insane person. You have to be like so balanced, but you have to kind of be able to contain both. And as I was speaking about, like sanity and insanity is almost about congruence. It's about order and chaos, but it's also about congruence and contradiction. Like that kind of dichotomy, if you get what I'm saying. And what I'm saying to you is that the absolute is neither congruent nor is it contradictory, yet your ego, which is only a schism of the self, which has others which it now must defend against, and it has its own self and own particularities which it now must protect. I'm rewatching even what I was just saying. It's the reason why there's so much tangents, and my friend even was saying this to me as well, and it made a lot of sense, is when you're trying to put such a vast amount of information into such a small like frame, it almost can't compute, if you get what I'm saying. Like, you can't speak about infinity in even people look at a video, they think, oh, an hour, 2 hours, that's too long. Like, do you think you can explain all of reality in 2 hours? You need infinity to explain infinity. But wait, the point. Yeah, it was about the sameness. So the whole reason is because the ego, because it has a particular form, it needs to stay that way to survive. Because remember, I said change is death, and too much change, once you cross like a certain line to where you're just completely unrecognizable from your original form, that's death. So the whole time, even though you're in an infinitely changing world and it's in a sense absolute chaos, you're trying to always rationalize to yourself and explain to yourself how this is a logical world. You're still in the same world. You're still the same self. See, the ego structure, as I explained with anchors, yeah, it's created through these axioms and these beliefs, these core assumptions which cannot be questioned or undermined at all. Otherwise, the whole structure will collapse, as I explained before. And some of these core axioms, for example, like just base normal core ones that almost everyone has, is, for example, the idea, I am alive. I am a good person as opposed to a bad person. And see, even this one's tricky because someone could even think, oh, I'm a bad person and be proud about it or something. But then, see, look, they could, let's say they do some things that they think are bad, is bad. Then they're going to feel guilty about it and still think that they're a good person who fucked up. But then let's say they identify as a bad person and they're proud about it. So that might seem to contradict the idea that everyone thinks they're a good person, but you have to realize that that person who thinks he's bad and is proud about it, he thinks that that's a good thing. He thinks it's good that he's bad. Do you see it? This is what I was explaining so many times with the absoluteness and the plus and plus, like is, isn't, is. So isness is absolute. Isn't is only the shadow of is. Like isn't is only what is not. It doesn't have an essence of its own. There's only is. Is the only thing. Existence, like truth, is the only thing that's true. Consciousness is the only thing that's conscious. There's not many consciousnesses. No, there's just consciousness. There's just truth. And it has the capacity for consciousness. So it can recognize itself as being true, which is what it is. And then you can recognize, oh, like imagination or falsehood, like imagination is imaginary, falsehood is false, because truth is absolute. Isness is absolute. There isn't anything that isn't, because if it isn't, if I say this is not white. So if I say this is not black. See, because this one's that it's tricky because people think that there's like dualities are like just cut right down the middle and both sides are almost equal. And in a sense they are, but it's almost like, I don't know, this might be tricky. I don't know, like this is a little bit speculative, but it seems almost to me like on every duality, one of the sides is actually the true side. Like chaos, like it might seem like order and chaos. Like it might seem like order and chaos are like completely like opposites and like neither of them's above the other. But can you kind of see how chaos isn't really, it doesn't have an essence of its own. Chaos is literally just the maximum deviation away from order. Order really is the true one. Like up is really like right and left. Like I don't know. This is where it gets tricky because then you might say, oh, like which dualities are the true ones, right and wrong. But like, for example, like right and wrong is a good one. Like wrong, do you see like kind of wrong is just the antithesis of right. Like right is the true one. Everything is right, even what's wrong. That's why wrongness exists. People think, why does evil exist? Because it's too radical for people to understand, but something as insane as what's happening in Palestine, everything what's happening nowadays, like when you really look at it from a human perspective, like it's just insane. Like it's just kind of hits you, like. But from God's perspective, this is the most righteous thing that could be happening. Everything that happens, just for the sake that it happened, it means that it was the best thing, the most perfect thing, the highest thing to ever like happen. Any other way would have been wrong. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been this way. Do you get? So like people always think that there's some better way it could have been. I could myself could have imagined the better thing, but then because you're already only using limited data, you would fuck it up. Because you have to kind of imagine high consciousness, like it's like almost like a magnifier. It's an infinite magnifier. So if you're even a little bit biased, even 0.001%, and you're a little bit off balance, if you times that by infinity, it's insane. That's why it's like it starts to veer off into infinity. Like that schism will be insane, even 0.001%. So that's why I was even explaining with the psychedelics, all of these things. Like you have to already kind of be in a state of yoga. You have to already be meditating. You have to already know. You have to already kind of be in the 0 point. Otherwise, if you amplify up your structure and your structure is already wonky or even just a little bit, it's gonna magnify that. That's why people have bad trips, because their psychology is already fucked, and then it's getting magnified, and they can't stop it. Obviously, the trip ends, but in that moment, it's like you're on a roller coaster and you're strapped in. But imagine for 6 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, and it's in your mind. It's not even like people think. People think like the scariest thing could be like, you, like your body, like I don't know. That obviously there are some really scary like ideas of ways that you could die or something. Like, I wouldn't really want to fall from a tall building or like, you know, there's like there's things that, you know what I'm saying, that you wouldn't really want. But I'm telling you, the worst thing, like really what you think, what like the highest, like the worst thing would almost be a mind hack. Like it's inside you. It's like hacked you. Like, so in a sense, when you kind of take like a psychedelic, one of these things, it's like you're allowing it. Obviously, it's not really a hack against your will, because you've kind of allowed it. You chose this. But in that point, once you take it and it's like in your system and you can't really whatever, like it's almost like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's in your mind. Like it's, because as I remember, I said, the further away things are from you, like the easier it is to kind of tell that it's not you. Like you can tell that TV is not me, of course. That like my phone, like it's my phone, but it's not really me. Like I could lose that. That's not me. But then, you know what I'm saying? Your hand, you'll be like, oh, but that's me, right? Like this is my hand, but really it's not you. You could use your hand and you're still you, right? So, and then you just keep on coming back, like, and then try to get to that point. Try to like get there, and then you'll find out. But see, I've gone on a million times. I was supposed to be speaking about pretending. Yeah, I can't lie. The freestyling thing, it just takes over. It takes over. But yeah, see, it's all, yeah. That was even what I was writing. Yeah, see, it's all about identity. What do you identify as? What do you see? Because what you recognize that everyone identifies as something different, and what you identify as will lead to different things that you need to protect, different things that you need to deny, and other things that you need to reaffirm. No matter what, like this data that you come into contact with, because you could come into contact with something that will completely debunk your thing, yet people like, see, delusion, like the delusion of the mind can be to such infinite degrees, because what you don't understand is that because the self is absolute, right? And as I said, in a sense, the mind is already encapsulated in the self. It's just a part of the self, but it itself is gonna like masquerade as the self. That's what the mind will do. It will masquerade as the self, even though it's just a part of the self, and it's like just a self reflection of the self. Um, and the mind, because the self, like, it's not even the mind, because the mind is always in comparison to something else, and there could be many minds. There could be my mind, your mind, so many minds. Um, but because the self, which like the mind is just a fragment of, and it is its true nature, like the self itself, like you could think that's like the mind in this, in like the self. You could think, because the self, there's only the one self. So even though there may be seemingly other minds, really all you have access to, all you've ever had access to is your own mind. And that's all you could ever have access to. That's why I keep on saying, try to escape your consciousness. Like, try to get outside. Try to even remember a time when you wasn't here now. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you'll realize it's impossible. Everything else that you think was back then or that might happen tomorrow is a memory or an imagination here now. Do you see it? Like, you can't collapse the waveform. Like, you can't get outside of eternity. Because remember, every coordinate, you might go like 1,000,000 miles there, that's still the center of the universe, because there's no center. So no matter where you go, you could be dead. You're still going to be there. You're going to be dead. Like, there's not, see, the mind kind of thinks, oh, I'm going to be dead. So like, it's not going to be me like that. Like, me being dead means like I'm not dead. No, it's going to be you. You're going to be dead. Like, yeah. So it depends what you identify as, and some of the core axioms. So everyone has different, unique ones. But the reason why, when you get awakened, you can kind of, obviously, you might not be able to tell everyone's problem, but the reason why you can read other people, just like it's just so easy, just by looking at them, looking at their body structure, just the way they move, the way they speak, even before you've had a conversation, you could kind of tell. But because everyone else is just a different version of you, it's just like a copy of you. It's just a copy of this unit, and it's just. But then, as I said, to even exist, every frame is unique. So every frame is different. But you could almost imagine, like, let's say this is just all the ego. Obviously, this, like, the self is boundless. But then let's just see that that's the ego, and like you could almost imagine the core, like the core of the ego. Because remember, there's loads of different layers. But like, let's just say this is the ego. Then the core of the ego is kind of what overlaps with all egos. That's almost like the collective conscious or the collective unconscious. Like, there's a part of your ego to where, as I said, every ego, like if you compare this ego to that ego, they'll be different. But really, the cores will be mostly the same. It's just like what will be on the outside, kind of, that will be a little bit different. So you could imagine that's the ego, then there's the core, and then everything on the outside is kind of is like what kind of separates is what different. So what I'm saying is, like, that stuff on the surface, like, oh, he likes red and he likes blue, like all of that kind of stuff. Alright, cool, yes, but you both like color. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't see, all of that stuff is minutia. Like, it's just at the top level. Like, it's just on the surface. So all of that kind of stuff, yes, will make you seem a little bit different, but in the core, every ego is basically the same thing. So once you kind of understand your own ego, you will be able to understand everyone, basically, because it's the same structure. And some of the ones that everyone has, essentially what I was saying, the core ones that overlap for everyone in like the collective unconscious is, I am alive, I am a good person, I don't know, I want to do good things, like, I am here, not there. Like, there's just basically certain core assumptions that everything is built upon that. Like, like time is one of the main ones. I came from the past 1 second ago, 5 seconds ago. I'm here now, and I will be in the future in 5 seconds or in 1 second. And see, even though the ego also thinks of itself as here now, but the here now that the ego thinks in is always by comparison. It's not the absolute here now. Like the absolute here now encapsulates the past, the future, and the present, which is eternal, which never ends. It's just really realize right now you're in the present, and the present isn't like a millisecond that passes onto like the present doesn't change with the frames, like the screen doesn't change with the pixels on the screen. Like, it could show one, like you could be watching a movie and then there's one character and it changes the scene and it's showing a different character now. Like this, it's still the same screen. It's just different characters, different pixels. So your screen, like it stays the same. It stays the same. One sec. Yeah. So the whole point of what I was saying there is that screen kind of represents the present moment. And then in the movie, like, almost imagine a movie that happens in an instant, but like all of the frames, like the movement happens. But then see, in this world, when we watch a movie, we might say, oh, it was 2 hours long or 3 hours long. But really it happened in an instant. That measurement of time already again was an overlay of the mind. It's like a memory. You're thinking back, oh, or it tells you see a sign, it was this amount of time, and then you think, oh, that amount of change is that amount of time. Remember how I explained time is change, and then there's infinite kind of relative truths in the absolute, and it's almost like frames in a film. It's almost like seconds in a minute, or minutes in an hour. Remember holons, the fractal nature. So yeah, one sec. All right, cool. But where it really gets tricky, for example, is when with spiritual people, when you start to identify as being spiritual now, or even just with morality. That's really one of the main ones. That because you don't even need to be spiritual to fall into that one. It's like, oh, I identify as a good person. So, and that's where a lot of the pretending comes in. See that all of this is basically I'm explaining minutia. I have to like kind of go down and explain that, and then explain that, and explain that, and explain that. Then loop back to the main thing that I was speaking about to begin with. But pretending like so. Remember, the ego is the psychological. It's the psychological self-image, which is just a part of the self, but it masquerades as the whole self, but it's just a self-reflection. It's the psychological self, basically. What you think of yourself, how you think you will be perceived by others. And this was another point I was going to get into later. Realize that there would be no ego if there were no others. Like, already, that's what I'm saying, the whole schism of the self from the self to other, so into relative self and relative. So you could almost think the higher self or the macro self, that's the absolute, that's just the self, and then which contains the relative and, you know what I'm saying, the good and the bad, all of the dualities. And then once it gets split, it's into the micro self and micro other. There's no macro self and macro other. There's only the macro self. But when it comes down, then there's the micro self and the micro other. So that's kind of the ego. Like you can only experience the micro others or any kind of other where it might seem to you like that's the macro other that I'm experiencing, like some other that's above me, but that's still like like any kind of. That's why I said any kind of even experience of God. I'd almost refer to those as like an angel contact, because you can't perceive God really in a finite form. Like you already are God, the absolute. So you just have to become it. You can't just fucking like see God. Anytime you see God, I'm not saying people haven't come into contact with God or had God experiences, because I have as well, but you're always going to experience a limited form, even though it might be so gigantic and just enormous and colossal in comparison to every other relative or finite thing that you experience in your day-to-day mundane life. Like, let's say this is you, and then you experience this thing, these small things in your mundane life, like work, going, like driving and doing this thing or whatever, like going on a date and stuff. But then this experience of God, even though it will still be limited, because it has to even be limited to even be perceived. And it might be so colossal, and the subject might be so small at this point, because to even experience such a large, colossal form of other, which you in that moment might think as God or whatever, the subject has to already be so small. It's almost like nowadays everyone's ego is on 99%, and they only see 1% of the world or the true self, because their ego's blocking it all up. And then if you kind of get more balanced or something, then you could say like 50-50. But an enlightened person is almost like the subject has come down to 1%, and then now they're seeing 99% of just the actual universe. And then only at 100% is where it's fully merged back into just one thing. But yeah, that's not really a thing that can be sustained. I think you can experience that and then kind of maintain the body and kind of come back down in contact with like the knowledge of that, so to speak. But or you could even like experience that in death, and you would just die at that point, because really it's almost like the ultimate death. So if you identify as being a good person, let's say you really hate someone, and they've been taking the piss, they've been crossing boundaries, doing certain things which you think is unacceptable. But then because you think of yourself as a good person, you might pretend like it isn't affecting you, or it's not like annoying you or harming you in any way. And you might pretend like, oh, it's fine, and not do anything about it, become a doormat or whatever, so on and so forth. And realize how pretending is always covering up a truth. It's covering up a truth that you subconsciously know is true, yet it's too harsh, too painful of a truth, or the truth itself would undermine your current ego structure. Remember that your ego is made of the axioms and the structure. And usually these harsh truths that you know is true subconsciously, you wouldn't even say that. Like if you ask the person, they would say, no, that's not true. But subconsciously they know it's true. It's almost like it's just pure denial. Like you're trying to say, no, not that, not that, but it's that. You know what I'm saying? So obviously there's different levels. Like there could be a thing to where you just genuinely don't even know. But then I'm speaking about pretend where you actually subconsciously know, but it's just pure denial. That's almost like kind of the essence of the devil as well. It's just pure denial, pure ignorance. What is ignorance? It's ignoring. Like you're ignoring what's right there. It's not like people think ignorance is like something you don't know. Like being a fool is not knowing stuff. Like no, being a fool is like seeing it, knowing it, and fucking denying it, ignoring it. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, like you know that fucking oven, it will burn your hand, and yet you think, yes, I'm still going to touch it, and you burn yourself and say, ow, I shouldn't have done that. Like that's a fool. You know what I'm saying? A child that didn't even know that that's hot and touched it and burned their hand, are they a fool? No, they're not a fool. They didn't even know. So you know what I'm saying? It's obvious kind of stuff. But yeah, so depending on what you identify as and how you perceive yourself, there will be certain external stimuluses that will kind of debunk that or whatever. And then there'll be certain things that will reaffirm it. And then your ego will be actively trying to deny the stuff that goes against it and reaffirm. And it will specifically look for things that will reinforce its own standing position, if you get what I'm saying. And yeah, so it's almost like you could even ask yourself, like, what are you not allowing yourself? What are you not allowed to admit to yourself? Like, it's not even about admitting to others. It gets way more trickier when it's about to yourself. Remember how I even started off this video with how there's layers of pretending to where you clearly know I'm pretending. Like, oh, I pretend to like my manager, or, you know what I'm saying, so that they give me a raise or something. And you clearly know that in the moment. But then there'll be things where you're pretending. You're pretending to others. Even when you're by yourself, you still could be pretending and you don't even know. That's basically the layers that I'm trying to like reveal to you. And like that's the layers that you need to become aware of to like start growing further. Um, and yeah, so for example, even just the current state of like society. Um, So as I said, from the absolute sense, like, which is really where I see things from the most time, like, you kind of have to imagine, I don't know, after self realization or after a certain point, like, if you really are centered in the 0 point, like, it's wild because, like, there will still be crazy things happening in your life or in, like, to your micro self that the micro self might not be enjoying or that, like, there'll be all kinds of crazy stuff, wild events and stuff, like, but it's insane how indifferent the self is. Like the self is so indifferent. It's almost like it's it's like like would it's like what's a good analogy for this? Like, I don't know. Like, imagine we have a TV and you're putting a movie on, and then there's a person, a subject watching it, and then you could ask them like what they think about it, so on and so forth. They might think, oh, that's a good movie, or that's a bad movie, or they're getting intense in this moment, whatever, whatever. And then you put another person and they have a different reaction, so on and so forth. And then imagine now we're playing the movie, but no one's watching it. And then you just ask, like, imagine there's a chair, and then you're putting all the people in the chair, like that's the what do they call that? The hot chair, or like, I don't know, like they put people on the hot spot and like on the chair, and then they're asking them, and they switch, and then now it's just the movie playing to the chair, but no one's sitting on it, and then they're still asking like nothing. They're just there, like put a microphone, like there's nothing there, but there's just a chair. They're saying, "Oh, what did you think?" And it's just like literally just it's literally just like that. It's and see because it almost is gonna sound like atheism because it's gonna sound like, oh, you're saying that God doesn't exist, and I am saying that God doesn't exist, but God is still true and it's still absolute and it's still being itself. But you don't but you think that that's other or lower than existence, but that is based like existence is already lower than that, and in a sense, your whole the reason why you think you think you exist because you have a feeling of existence or consciousness, which is aware of your existence. But like that feeling of existence is actually the feeling of truth. That's what I want you to understand now. Like truth is not some psychological thing. Like truth, yes, there's like psychological truths and like that's all like in the relative plane and stuff. Like even or you can theorize or some kind of theory or whatever. But truth is a fundamental like that's what reality is made out of. And what truth is it is true. It represents that which is itself. Falsehood, by definition, is basic. False is not true. So the thing is like saying that black is white. That's false. Like that's that's like the literal thing of false is saying black is white or life is death. And that's why I was saying that's the peak of the dream when you reach Shiva, that which is not. When you basically take negation to the extreme. Everything not. It's not this, not that. I neither exist. I neither don't exist. It's neither good. It's neither bad. It's neither pleasurable. It's neither painful. It's not yesterday. It's not tomorrow. It's not tomorrow. It's not. It's not cheating. It's not straight. It's not. It's not conscious. It's not unconscious. It's not aware. It's not unaware. It's not funny. It's not serious. It's not left. It's not right. It's not up. It's not down. It's not forward. It's not backwards. It's not God. It's not the devil. It's not me. It's not him. It's not that. It's not this. That's basically like Shiva, like the peak of the dream. Like that's basically enlightenment. When you realize everything that is not, if you get what I'm saying. um, but self-realization, in my opinion, is above that. And you have to be enlightened first to even be able to get self-realized. Um, because you have to kind of like, enlightenment is kind of like the collapsing of the dream, like getting to the peak of the dream, letting the dream collapse, seeing all the falsehood, but then seeing all the falsehood, but you still don't see the truth really yet. Like you're getting closer to the truth, you're kind of merging to the truth because you're kind of stripping away all that you're not, but then the truth is just in an instant, like it's absolute. There is only one truth. Like there's not, you can't say like, oh yes, I'm 99% enlightened or something. Like that's why I just kind of have to disagree with people who say that there's not a switch for like, I'd say yes, there's not a switch for enlightenment, kind of, but like self-realization, like it's just a switch. Like there's levels of enlightenment and stuff, but at a certain point, and I feel like everyone, I don't want to sound like arrogant or something. It's nothing about that, but I don't know. I just feel like the people, because there's a lot of people who are very enlightened, and I still watch them. Even people who I think might not be self-realized, I still watch them. They still like have stuff that they help me with, like all of this kind of stuff. It's not about like this kind of who's about like nothing like that. But genuinely, those kind of people who say that there's no like switch, and it's just only just a scale. I just think that they haven't got self-realized yet, and they won't be aware of that. They won't even know that. They'll say that there's levels of self-realization and stuff like that. Like there isn't. Like to me, if you think that there's levels of self-realization, like you're just not self-realized. Like how could there be levels? It's like, see, because you're still in the dream, you're still kind of going up to the peak, and then there, as I said, you're kind of in peak uncertainty. So you're always just seeing everything that is not. And then you're seeing, of course, enlightenment is not just an on and on switch. Or of course, it's nothing. You just get enlightened, then you get more enlightened and more. And I went through all of that, and it felt like it'll go on forever. It felt like there is no edge. You just keep on getting more and more enlightened and more enlightened. And that's why I know that some of these people aren't self-realized, because when I got self-realized, it was so shocking. Like, even though enlightenment and all these kind of things were so shocking, but this was a different level. I did not see it coming. It was the ultimate, like I'd never heard of it. Like when it happened, it was something else. Like there wasn't really like, there's nothing like above that or like after that. Like there was even a little period after that where there was still kind of like that inertia and energy of like searching or kind of getting more enlightened and like progressing. But then like there was a certain like, I remember clearly there was a certain realization that I had, and then it just reinforced back to me like there's a certain point, like it's just like at a certain point you're just hitting your head on the wall like a million times. Like how many times are you gonna hit your head on the wall now? Like it's like you're trying to light a candle that's already lit. You're trying to light it more. Can you light a candle more than it's already lit? Like, all right, cool. Yeah, you might say, pour gasoline, make the flame bigger. It was already lit though. You're just changing the form. Like, yes, I'm not denying that like the form can expand a million times, but at this point, it doesn't even care. You don't even care about how far it expands, like how high that peak is. Like, you just know every peak is just in reference. Like, it doesn't even mean anything. Like, a peak can't be sustained. Like, it's only down after that. So you have to see that peaks. You see how in the yin and yang, there's black and white, and in the black there's a bit of white, and in the white there's a bit of black. Like a peak, like the peak is the peak. It's so good. It's amazing. Like if you've been at the peak, it's in that moment you realize everything is worth it. All that strife, all those dead people, all those like every single evil thing you could think of. Like the peak is like as bad as those things are, the peak is equivalently good. It's so good. Like when you're there, everything, you don't care about anything. It's complete abandon. Like, like if this happened or that happened, like you just wouldn't give a fuck. Like it's just a different kind of state. It's just pure unconditional bliss, ecstasy. Like if you've been there, it's not really like, oh, like I can ask you, oh, have you been there? And you're thinking, yeah, I think I might have been. Like, no, it's not like, oh, I think I might have been there, man. Like, no, like you know this, like this is just something else. Like this is the peak, the actual peak. But the thing about the peak, as I said, because the peak is also relative now. There's not such a thing as an absolute peak. You see, in a sense, as I kind of explained, see, these are all models, but with that triangle and the hierarchy, I explained all of this in the like hierarchy and lots of different. Or there was a couple of different videos, like the absolute truth ones, like that kind of hierarchy. And then remember, I was kind of saying like, oh yeah, like these are the what's, and then it kind of goes up, and then you realize what's not, more and more to what's not. Then you reach the peak of that peak uncertainty, which is in a sense Shiva, or like the highest kind of that which is not. It just literally represents the isn't that is, but then you still haven't realized the is that is. And see, even a lot of the Indian people, they'll say, oh yes, Shiva is the Mahadev, and in a sense it is, what it's not though. Like it is, but because their whole argument is kind of like, oh, that everything arose from zero, and that's true. It is true. Like it's all just zero. So in a sense, I'm saying the same thing, but like it's almost like they're saying that isn't is more fundamental than is, and that is arose from isn't. But I'm saying no, there was just always is, just isness itself, and isn't is like an imagination, like you created. Isn't is like isn't is just like there was only is, and then it's like God, like it's like, oh, I'm like I imagine what it would be like to not be, or imagine something that didn't exist, or like that wasn't real, and imagine something that wasn't real, and then that's kind of like how the whole universe got created. Like because you have to realize, like I remember I told you, like nothing that's real can be created. Everything that's real or absolute is just already there. It's absolute, eternal. It's always been there. So what could you create? You can only create something that's false. It's like a temporary illusion. That's Maya. That's why it always oscillates up and down. Like you can't stay at a peak. Like in a sense, the real peak is like the baseline. The peak is the baseline. That's when you know you're really there. Like the peak isn't like a deviation, like the highest deviation. That's what people think, and that's like what I'm saying. Like when you experience the maximum deviation to the upside, see, there's deviations to the downside, deviations to the upside, and it's basically a spiritual orgasm. Like people think that like that orgasms are like the best thing that you can experience, and yeah, like as a human, it's pretty good, but like that's an orgasm to the downside. Now, imagine an orgasm to the upside. Like people haven't even experienced that. Like, it's just way more mad. It's just insanely mad. And people might think, "Oh, you're just some insult. You don't get sex." And like, trust me, like I've had sex. Like I've had both. I know what's better. And I'm not saying don't have sex or whatever, but I know what's better. Like it's just not even comparable. It's like dust. Sex, like to the downside, like that's not even like reaching like to your heart. Like it's not even like hitting the threshold. Like it's not even hitting the threshold. Like you can imagine like that's like rising here, like that's like a little thing here, and then imagine like it depends even where you're centered. See, that's what I'm saying. When you're centered lower, and you can kind of imagine like your base is here, and then like that's the oscillation up. So anything up to your sacral, that's like satisfied you. But then if you're centered up here in your third eye or something, like it's not even hitting you. Like, even something in your heart chakra where like some people are like, oh wow, like yo man, like the hippies and all of that energy and crystals and like all of that, that's not even hitting you. And then you know what I'm saying, only certain spiritual like things are like, but then what I'm speaking about is this like crown chakra. Like, it's really the peak. You're not even in your body at the point. Like once you kind of are centered in your, I don't know if other people kind of experience this. So I'm just gonna fuck the structure. But yeah, basically, I feel like I'm not saying you could be centered in your crown chakra, but I feel like yeah, if you're centered in your crown chakra, what it almost feels like, right? It's almost like you have like the string. Remember, this is like the cross, as I said, the 0, 0 point, and you could almost say that kind of intersects at your heart or wherever. It doesn't really matter, but there's like a reference about like everyone else is still like lower. You know what I'm saying? You can come up to here, whatever, even here, like that. That seems high, but when you're really it's almost like, yeah, imagine like you have a piece of string. Like there's something anchored like up here, like above you, like outside of your body, and it's like almost like an invisible string that's attached that you're attached to. And then no matter how like imbalanced the lower, like your lower self kind of gets, like it could get really deviated or whatever, like because you're basically anchored from above, you can never really lose balance, even though it may seem to be out of balance in a particular like snapshot. Like you're never out of balance, even in that frame. Like the micro self might, like, imagine you're on a fight, you just got punched in the temple, and you're feeling stunned. Like you're actually stunned, but still in that moment, you're still completely clear and conscious. Like you still know you're the self. It's just like there's just, you realize that no matter how far it deviates, it's just still the self. It's still just the baseline. It's still just nothing. You can't get outside of nothing. You can't really create something substantial. Um, so yeah, I just remembered why I went on that tangent, but yeah, it made sense. So I was going to speak about the current state of society, but the whole reason why I went on all of that is because really the current state of society, like it might sound like, oh, I'm saying, oh, the current state of society is bad or it's good or something, but realize that from the absolute, it's always kind of, in a sense, equally bad and good, equally right and wrong, equally chaotic and ordered. So that's kind of from the absolute, but just as a human kind of coming down, looking at the current state of things, for example, with pretending, like certain people try and act like things are better than they are. See, like we're in a strange, like I don't know, like the current present day is very strange, like, because we're it's very hard to predict kind of the course of the future because our technology, like everything is evolving at such a rapid pace that it's really hard to kind of even predict what the world will look like 20 years from now. Like it could be, or 50 years from now, like it could be some insane utopia. It could be a pile of dust. See, because even our technology is crazy because it's like, I don't know. This at this point is speculation, but I don't know. You guys can let me know what you think. But I almost feel like our technology, see, technology and all these things, it's just all it is tools. We can't, what made like humans be superior, obviously there was loads of different things, our self ability for self-reflection, thinking, like planning, all of this stuff, but also using tools. That was the main thing when we were conscious enough to use tools and use the environment to our advantage. See, like that, and really in a sense what that was an expansion of ourselves. We started to see like a dog, like obviously a lot of these animals do these things unconsciously anyway, like they're all part of the environment. You have to, as I said already, just from holons and fractal nature and how we're all parts and wholes, and so it's already always in an ecosystem and everything's reinforcing each other, and you have to always be transacting with the environment anyway. But humans, like, became very deliberate about how we kind of used, and not automatic. Like we weren't just automatically building a shelter, and like we did all of that, but then we evolved and we started, oh, maybe I can use this way and get this result, and then more experimentation. That's essentially the essence of science, is trial and error. A lot of things we learn by accident, just observation, seeing what happens. Um, and so technology is almost like just tools, but it's just gone to the like to a crazy degree now, like tool, and it's almost getting to the point. This whole idea of AI is almost like, imagine the tools get to a certain point to where they're not even tools because it's not even us using them; they're using themselves, or they're using us now. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, that's all just speculation. Um, But yeah, the main thing is that because now we're in a place where we have more convenience, more comfort, like as a whole speaking, than ever before. Like never in the past could you have just gotten to the other side of the country in less than a day, other side of the world in less than a day, or um, you know what I'm saying, have heating and clean water in your house and like electricity, internet, all this access to information at the click of a button, like all of this stuff. So all of that stuff can't be denied, and it's amazing all of this stuff. But at the same time, see, looking at it from my lens, everything is a double-edged sword. So what's tricky is that people will say, "Oh, look at all of this stuff," which is true, and I'm not denying that. But then they'll say, "Ah, because of all this technology, because of all these good convenience and stuff, like it's almost like they use that as a license to turn a blind eye on everything that's negative today." And they kind of dismiss all of that, like, oh, like this kind of like they just dismiss everything negative or constructive criticism or anything. They kind of dismiss it because, oh, look, like this is the best times ever, right? Like could we have landed on the moon like 1,000 years ago? And then they'll kind of try to use that as a measuring stick for like what's better, if you get what I'm saying. See, but it all depends on what you're measuring with and what your values are. Um, but yeah, like I don't know. It's almost like, especially for example, with the nuclear bomb and now the internet and God knows who knows what's behind the curtains and behind the scenes. um, like it's almost like I don't know. Obviously, maybe it might be stupid to say no, but no, it's not. I feel like our technology might, maybe it's not reached there yet, but we might reach a point where our technology is too sophisticated for us, the practitioners who are using it. Almost in the analogy sense of, like, for example, giving a shotgun to a 5-year-old or something like that. That's almost like kind of like what it's like with humans having a nuke. So I don't know, but obviously we haven't exploded anything yet. Well, obviously in Japan, but like we haven't like destroyed the world yet or whatever. But I don't know. It's just gonna keep on getting like now, like with the few clicks of a few buttons, we could destroy the whole world. Like um, now, it's just yeah. Like you almost have to think like you have to think with the lens of the zero sum game, because once you see a zero, then all these peaks or crazy achievements that we're achieving, it's almost like the cost is getting more and more insane because it's balanced. You know what I'm saying? The cost, like the benefit and the cost is always kind of equally balanced in the macro ultimate sense. Um, yeah, so kind of with all this stuff, right? All of this stuff is supposed to make our lives easier, which it definitely has. But really, we try to do that, make our lives easier to make us happier and have more enjoyment and make the quality of life better. And as I said, it has done that a lot to some degree, especially like healthcare and so on, even though there's crazy stuff with that as well. Um, but still, you can't say that like our current like hospitals and all of this, like if you're really in a like we've definitely made a lot of progress. You can't deny that. I'm not saying that everything is just exactly the same or whatever like that. But what I'm just saying is all of that was to make life better, which it kind of has. But are we actually happier? And like the cost. What? My main point is that people don't see life through a zero sum game or just through the zero lens. So they think that profit is possible or loss is possible. Like they genuinely think that there's some kind of maneuver or scheme that you can do where you can generate a profit, something substantial, that will like remain as a profit and as substantial. Like, it will remain that way and not kind of get rebalanced back out to zero again, or that there's something that could be lost that won't kind of also reimburse you in another way or get rebalanced in the ultimate sense. Like, once you kind of see it, the dynamic scale of reality, like, and no matter how much, you know what I'm saying, this is crazy situation, it's almost like, you know what I'm saying, like, it just always just balances itself out because it's just no one, it's just so in bias, like, it kind of takes all forces into account. It's kind of like a feather in the wind, and then but then it's just because it's taking all forces into account, and then it is just zero, and then it just kind of balances just out into just the perfect kind of equilibrium. But yeah, so are we actually getting back? And basically, I want to speak a bit about debt. Obviously, this kind of links with my money. I don't know how long this video is going to be. Didn't even want to make it this long, but the money, energy, and zero sum game video, and yeah, I wanted to just speak about the current financial system again and just debt, and how like people think that problems today, or like, let's say you have like a problem at work, you're getting overworked, or being treated unfairly, or um, you're not getting paid well enough, or there's not enough opportunity, or I don't know, whatever. Like, people think, oh, it's because of like this company, or it's because you voted for this side of the government. You should have, if you vote for that leader, things would just be way better. We'll be in a utopia. Should have voted better, man. Like, people be like, oh, choosing, like, obviously that'll make some minute, like, but it's always just like on the same scale again. It's still just the same machine. It's just the right hand and the left hand. Like, oh, it doesn't really matter. Like, no. So, but debt and the central banks, as I said, all that stuff, like, just the way it is now with all the debt that there is, and I just the inflation, even at work, like, I look around, like, I don't know, like, things are nice, but things aren't nice. I'll be real, like, people are struggling. People are struggling to just make ends meet. Like, just the general person, like, they're surviving, but they're always, everyone's exhausted. It's like their own life energy itself has gone into that. Like, everyone's just kind of like just 1 week away, 1 month away. Like, they can't stop. They're wage slaves, financial slaves, and they don't even know it. Like, these people, they'll boast like, oh yes, time is money. They're working from 8 till like 10 p.m. or something, and getting like all right, cool. Like, if you love your job or something, then come. And yeah, like, I'm sure, like, I see some people, like, they just love their job and stuff, but it's just like, I know that they might say like, oh, but they're not doing it because of that. They're doing it because they have to. And then I would just overhear so many like conversations. Oh, you're doing weekend, people working every single day, like doing overtimes, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, and because they've got the mortgage, they've got the kids, and everyone's in chains. They've enchained themselves into you're indebted to this, you're indebted to that. Like, you're anchored yourself, you're trapped in like this. You can't escape. Like, you might be able to get a one holiday, go for 1 week, come back, and then you're straight back in the machine. Like, the way things are, it's just sad. Like, I don't know, man. It's actually, I just feel like, obviously, this will all in the end, in my opinion, get rebalanced again. I feel like we're just kind of, we're at a certain extreme right now, almost like the everything bubble. Like, I do, like, if you look at the stock market, if you look just the way everything is, the amount that they're printing, the dollar, just everything is in a very strange position. Inflation, like, I'm seeing local shops closing down. I'm speaking to the guy. He's leaving from UK. Like, it's all done. The price, everything. Like, yeah, man. Like, in terms of financials, like, things aren't really the best, and I don't know if they'll get better. And just because essentially all the tricks that they used in the past to kind of sweep it under the rug, like, they keep on sweeping it under the rug, but that just pushes the problem further down the line. and the problem builds up even more the more you procrastinate. And then it's almost like, I don't think there will be some Armageddon or Doomsday or anything like that, but like, I don't know, like there has to be some kind of crash or collapse or something. But I think it will peak further, like first. I think it's going to keep on going up and then exacerbate, like in the last kind of push, exhaustive rally, and then like things are just going to collapse to some degree. I don't know, because prices are just everything. It's just too unsustainable right now. I look around. I just look at people's faces on the public transport. I look at people like everyone is miserable. Everyone's depressed. Like people like sometimes the only like you're hearing a couple jokes, but people are laughing at their own pain. Like oh, like we got to do that. Like where the situation's so fucked that all you can do is laugh at it. Like one of them ones. Like it's mad still. And then people pretending like everything's fine, and this was another thing I've realized as well. Yeah, like when because I obviously I didn't even have any like inspiration to make videos for like a week or two, but today I wrote like literally 20 ideas or something, and I mixed a few of these into here. But another one of them, I think it was, is that inflation has turned us into financial slaves, but everyone's too distracted as they live their ideal life vicariously through a screen. That was another thing. Like, bro, just go in public and look around, and like, I'm not saying I don't use the phone and stuff, like, of course, but like when you just actually just look, like everyone's in the box, like living their vicariously, like living like they'll see, because the mind is also, the ego is also trying to see, you're getting so, everything is so in debt. So you could either look at it in one way that there's not enough money in supply, or there's way too much money and the money doesn't mean anything. So you're just working so much, you're getting a lot, but everything costs so much. So you're still in the end, everything is still in minus. Like in the grand scheme of things, like that one person might have a little bit of savings, that one person might be in the, that doesn't matter about the minutia or whatever. Like one guy might be really up, and then he's saying, what are you talking about? Just grind harder, man. But then even in the whole scale, the more up he is, the more lower everyone else is as well. And it's just impossible for everyone to be up. But still, I just don't think that, like, I feel like we still have to raise the bar for like the minimum standard. Like the minimum standard should just be way better than it is now. Like I think it's just mad. But like people, yeah, like they'll be at work saying, yeah, like time is money. They're kind of lying to them, so I can just see it. Like they're saying, yeah, like getting so much money there, so. But I'm just sitting there thinking, I'll even question, like, all right, cool, but when are you going to enjoy that money? Like, you're here working like a slave, thinking you're doing something so good. I'm getting money. Like, they've been brainwashed. Like, in their mind, all it is, like, money, good. Money, good. So they think more money, better. More money, better. More money, ching, ching, good, good, good. They're not even seeing you're wasted. Like, you're saying time is money, but all you're going to do with that money is going to buy back more time to enjoy again. So like you're expending something you already have to get money to, like, it's just so indirect, so just doesn't make any sense. Like, and like, it's like, when are you even going to enjoy that money? Like, you don't even have time. You're here all the time. Like, it just doesn't make no sense at all at this point. People are just, it's just a hamster wheel. It just never ends. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it never ends. Like, it's basically the lack of choice. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being idealistic. I'm one of them guys that think, oh, like life could be some utopia. Or like, you're some utopia idealist or something. But I don't know. I feel like with the technology we have now, like with the intelligence, like if we're really evolving, yes, there will always be a hierarchy. I acknowledge that. I explained all of that myself anyway. But still, the people at the bottom should, like, the bare minimum at the bottom should already be way better than it is now, like, if you get what I'm saying. And it should almost be an optional to, I don't know, we should get to a certain point, maybe it's idealistic, but we should aim to get to a point to where the bottom, like, maybe it's not that you're doing nothing, but, like, you could basically, like, have your own place to live, like get basic survival and stuff, not be homeless and not be like so on and so forth, like have access to things, and then have the option, like you have incentives to where if you work more, like you'll get 1.5 times your amount or 2 times, and then, but then it also would have to be capped. It couldn't be like unlimited to where people could get so much and then start creating a monopoly and kind of rigging the system in their own favor. Like there would also even have to be a cap in the difference between like the levels, if you get what I'm saying. There would like, yeah, so that there's still like you can still choose to do more if you want to, but it's not like you're every day fighting and scrapping just to survive, just to basically be able to like pay rent for this month so you can sleep in that house for 6 hours and get back to work and work 10, 11 hours just to get enough to pay, to like have enough food to sustain yourself whilst you're working and go back home, sleep just enough to restore yourself to go back to work. like, it's just fun. Like, it's like before it was supposed to kind of be like, yes, it's equally balanced, like leisure, work, so on. You know what I'm saying? Like the 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of leisure, 8 hours of work. Like that's kind of how it was supposed to be and stuff. But with inflation, it's just look at the debt. Like, nah, man, it's just times are crazy. I wonder how things are gonna unfold with the financial and obviously with blockchain, all of this kind of stuff. We'll see how things go. But yeah, so the main thing is that it's a systemic problem and a structural problem with the debt, the interest, like even taxes. Like taxes would make sense if there was a finite amount of money, but there's not. So why, if the government can create money out of thin air, why are we getting taxed? The whole idea of tax is that we're funding back the government, we're giving them back a chunk of our things so that they can like survive, like give us like public, like why are we paying for public transport? If we're getting taxed, why are we paying for public transport? For like public transport and not like why are we even getting taxed? Like if they can just print more money, why are we getting taxed to fund them? And the maddest thing is that it's crazy because when you actually, it's not even the governments that print the money. It's the central banks, which is it's its own sector, like it's its own identity. If you get what I'm saying, like the Fed is in a sense like the central banks. The Fed, like it's essentially above the government. Like they're the ones loaning the government's money, and the governments are indebted to them. They're the ones who are like they own the whole world. If you get what I'm saying. Like they own everything. What like do they not have? Like everything that's indebted. Like the more debt, go on the chart right now. Type in the like US debt. Everything, and remember the US dollar is the central like because from Bretton Woods like it was supposed to be that the dollar is pegged to gold, and then every other currency is pegged to the dollar, and gold is finite, so it all made sense and taxes and so on. Even with them. Like people would start cutting it's the same thing. It's literally the same thing. It's like they will start like mixing gold with another metal and bringing down the purity. It's the same thing what they're doing with the interest rate where they loan and then you always have to pay more back and then so there's always less in supply or there's more but it's worth less, so it doesn't even matter what the fuck way it is. It's the same basically thing. You get 10 people in a room, 10 meals, fine. Then you take out 2. Oh, better squabble then more. Imagine only 2 meals now, and then there's 10 people get stabbed in the head. People get insane stuff. Was it really that guy? Like when he stabbed him in the head to get that meal? Was he really an evil person, or was it the systematic problem? Was it the situation itself that was wrong in the first place? Do you get what I'm saying? So people might be doing evil stuff. There might be like some evil, selfish politician or something, but you have to realize everyone's just fighting to survive. Everyone's in the same way. We're all in the jungle. Everyone's just trying to get enough for them. But then if there's less resources, and the maddest thing is obviously maybe it has to be this way. Maybe like they're doing it this way because as we progress, the resources are getting less, and inflation has to go up because otherwise we'll just keep on consuming more until there will just be nothing. But I don't really know if that's the case. And I feel like even if the resources were abundant, they could still make it seem like resources and currency and all these things are, you know what I'm saying, getting less and less and less, so that we have to work more and are more enslaved to that perception, even though it's not true. Like we could still be abundant, like there could still be 10 meals, but we just took 8 out of the room. And then, you know what I'm saying? But they're locked in the room, basically, if you get what I'm saying. And the room is, in the sense, the matrix, the box, like where you're working and stuff. And it's just like you're always working, and it's like you're working the same amount, and each day you're getting less return. And then people get depressed and they'll get less motivated, but then they'll have a wife and some who they have to sustain, and their kids you have to pay for, and then there will be certain things that they can't even escape. They're just trapped. Fully trapped. And it's just crazy that. And it's almost like I don't know. I don't know if I'll get into that one. But yeah, for example, you have to kind of realize as well, yeah, this will help you as well, is when you kind of realize that it takes energy, it takes a lot of energy and effort. You might not realize it at first because it almost happened automatically, but once you start paying attention, realize that pretending or acting, it takes up a lot of energy. And then the more relaxed you are, like, the more you can't fucking be pretending, like, you can't be pretending and not exerting it. Every time you're pretending, you're exerting energy, being animated and trying to sell the lie, and like, but being truthful is actually the easiest thing. But it's just that people are so programmed into this compulsive lying and pretending and trying to control the situation. And you know what I'm saying? Like, you might not like something, but then your friend likes it. Something as small as this, and then you pretend to like it to not hurt their feelings. Like something as minute as that. And you might think that's a good thing, but then also, that's also a lie. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not even saying that lying is bad, but it's just like, it's just, I don't know. In my opinion, from my own perception, the main thing is you just have to become more and more aligned with truth, because that's all there is. So it's not even like you're doing it to get rewarded by God or like to make it better for them. Like, it's literally, you're just doing it just because otherwise you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot. And yeah, in a sense, pretending is lying to a certain degree. You have to realize there's a truth that you're covering up, and you might not even realize the truth. You might, the thing that you're denying, you might genuinely think on the surface level, like that you actually disbelieve that, but on the subconscious level, you actually know it's true, but you're this. So there's different ones, as I said. Certain times you might genuinely not believe it, and it might be right or something. But then what I'm speaking about, and because there's a certain feeling to it, it's hard to see if you're not conscious enough. But if you're conscious and sharp enough, you'll see the kind of, there's a certain kind of, like, it's magnetic, like it's a certain repulsive energy. There's a repulsive energy when you're kind of lying and pretending and scheming and trying to make it what it's not, just to get it your way, basically, rather than just letting it be what the fuck it is. And I'm gonna end it here, basically. One of the main axioms of all egos as well, or maybe not all egos, but many, and I had this as well, which I'm also kind of slowly transcending as well. And people might think, I'm being like depressive, or like, being a downer, or something. Like, I don't know, like they might think I'm being negative, but this is just true. Like, it's basically the fundamental axiom that you have, that life is good. Life is good. It's a blessing. It's a present, like something you have to be grateful for. You're so like blessed to have this, and even if your life is terrible, this or that, or you're in agonizing pain, don't complain. Just be grateful for everything. Be grateful you get stabbed in the heart, be grateful. You get stolen from, be grateful. You get stabbed, be grateful. You get scammed, like whatever, you know. So this kind of idea, obviously, it's easy to say like, oh no, I don't like subscribe to that, like with those extreme examples, but yeah, that's like another core one. That's a core one that everything, like, see, because where this like kind of gets embodied and it's actually practical. And so it's like, for example, let's say you have this fundamental thing that life is good, but then you're going through a terrible situation. And I even realized this with, like, for example, my own addiction and so on, which I kind of went into with the desire video. Like, for example, smoking, which I don't smoke too much, but I smoke. You know what I'm saying? Not cigarettes, but just spliffs. Just basically a mixture of weed and tobacco. I'll have like maybe a couple of days after I come back from work or something. That's kind of like, when it comes from my environment, it's something that I kind of just picked up. I enjoyed it. There's many other things I've been exposed to. I don't really drink like that. I don't do pills. I don't do basically anything. But this is my one kind of thing. Everyone kind of has something, and I'm trying to work on it as well, as I explained and all of that. But one reason what, like, and also as I tried to transcend and like kind of distance myself and quit like weed and so on, like I also gained some insights and knowledge in the at the same time. And also that's a trick though of the ego, where it say, don't worry, I'll just relapse again because I'm just going to learn more, and then that's going to help me to not do it in the future. So that's another way that your mind can keep on stalling it. So don't fall into that trap. However, still, when you're genuinely trying to quit or something, but then let's say after 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then you relapse, but then you realize something, like a key thing of why you did relapse or why you do this in the first place. And then certain times you do get those real shifts, and you had to kind of go through that ups and downs and that thing to even like learn those lessons. But this was one that I kind of realized from that as well, is that the whole, like, let's say I come back from work, and I do enjoy my work sometimes, like to some degree, but it's more that I have to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and even though I'm still choosing to do it, because I could be not working, so, but it's even just my own certain standards that I hold for myself as well. Which, as I said, is all everything I explained, and you don't have to hold those standards. And I don't. It's not even like I'm some perfection. I want to get, but like I don't know. Like there's certain kind of things at least that I want to kind of. I don't like. As I said, spiritually, I don't really care for any other like experience. I could kind of die right now. I wouldn't give a shit. But for the fact that I'm still alive, I'm not suicidal or anything like that. So I'm still going to try and make the most of it, if you get what I'm saying. And I know in the end it's a zero-sum game. But then at the same time, so you can kind of take that both ways. You can say it's just still just zero, so I'm going to do nothing and get nothing. And that will also be the same result. Or you could do more and get more. And then I'm not even trying to just do more and get more, but it's just like, because I'm fine with doing less and getting less. Like, really I am. But it's just that, to me, it seems wiser to do more as I'm younger. Whilst I still have this energy, I just have to do more later. And literally everything I do now is almost like so I could just chill like later, if you get what I'm saying. Just get it out of the way, like kind of just have your meal first, then have the dessert later, even though all I really want is the dessert. So it's kind of contradictory, but that's literally how the nature is. Like it's crazy. Like people work so they can have fun and chill later. people, you know what I'm saying? Like everything is in contrast and in opposites, as I said, in the dualistic thing. But the main thing is life is good. So, for example, let's say I had a bad day at work, and even because there's other things that I want to do for work and so on, but that I'm kind of working towards. Like this is my pros, and I'm doing this job to kind of build on that, and so on and so forth. But certain things are temporary. You have to kind of go through all of that, go through the stages. You can't skip stages. And so this, like where I am right now, isn't exactly where I want to be. But it's way better than I was like a couple years ago, and so on and so forth. Anyway, but let's say I had a bad day from work or shit day at work, and then I'll come home, and then I don't only smoke. Like some people say, like you only smoke or relapse, or like or just when they're speaking about addictions, like you only do it when you're down or something, escape from reality. Like certain times, like I've gone a week without smoking something, and then when I smoked, it was just because I was feeling so good. I was feeling at such a peak. I was feeling so good even without smoking that I felt to smoking as a celebration. Like it sounds stupid, like literally. So it kind of goes both ways. You could be down and it tries to as a pick me up, or you could be so up and it's almost like to ground yourself back, or as a celebration or whatever. But yeah, but this one is more like kind of from when you're down and it's kind of bringing you back up to baseline, or bringing you back like to a high or above, like slightly above baseline. Like that's basically with the idea that life is good, because you could be experiencing so much shit that isn't good, that's bad, and that you basically know that yourself. But because you have to maintain, see, all these like beliefs and your own axioms of your ego have to be maintained, because otherwise they'll fall apart by themselves. Like you have to actively maintain them every day, and that's what like basically decides your actions. Like your actions seem automatic, or like you're picking them, but actually it's more automatic. It's like you're trying to, like, if you think, oh, I'm gonna put, then you're gonna try and give that person that thing just to maintain that image to yourself, not even just to others. Like first you have to even maintain it to yourself for you to even be able to consciously like reflect that to others. So yeah, once you kind of realize, I'm not saying, oh, be a downer, because I'm not saying life is bad either. No, it's exactly balanced. So I'm not saying, oh, it becomes some depressed or whatever, but you have to realize life isn't inherently good. It's not inherently good. And it's a zero-sum game. And like the more you try, and the more like higher like ideals you have and standards and so on, the more energy you're gonna have to keep on like investing to hold it up. And yeah, it might be worth it some, but eventually it's just gonna like think it's just not gonna be sustainable, if you get what I'm saying. You'll get a big crash, and a real backlash. And like the more pleasure and happiness you're chasing, then the more pain and suffering you're gonna reinforce back. And yeah, it's just a zero-sum game in the end. But the main thing, stop pretending. Try and be more true to yourself. Stop trying to be how others want you to be, and stop trying to be like how you think you should be, or how you imagine yourself to be, or anything. No, just be. Full stop.